with a bunch of different wedding photographers taking digital prints and then going to a local printer with some designer help and trying to print. And Convera is essentially making it into a fully organized, into a proper business. And to give you an idea, Peeyush didn't mention, but you have a network of over 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 photographers, or probably even more.
It's close to 20,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the scale, that's the reach that they have, and this is all over India. And we'll get into, they have a very interesting sales model that we will get into later on, but that's a great learning experience for a lot of the entrepreneurs in terms of how to exploit a B2B or a B2B2C model. And with that, they have been able to create this completely new business model. So let's get into some of the individual components of their business model. But before I do that, let's go back to 2007 is when you started. So this is a typical question for every entrepreneur, no matter how big. I mean, it could be Elon Musk or Bill Gates. But how were the first 6 months, and what were some of the teething troubles that you had, and how did you go about it? Whether it was funding or the first idea that you had, and how many times it had to change before you got to something that you said, okay, let me actually create it. How were the first 6 months or a year?
Yeah, it was. It's a very, I would say, in hindsight, it's very exciting as well as tough at the same time. Both Dheeraj and I, Dheeraj is my co-founder, we both left our jobs in early 2007, and it's a decision that is not. It's very difficult, right? I had a family at that time. I still have the family. Yeah, they still haven't left me yet. But leaving a job where you don't have an income for God knows how long is a tough decision. So that journey, when you start, it is very tough. I did not have like a lot of money before that I could depend on, so it makes it even more tough to take that kind of decision. And we didn't know whether we'll get funding or not, right? The reason why let me touch upon funding a little bit, right? Because that's, I think, for most people that is a very important question. After having worked in a startup for 7 years, my advice to everybody is that funding should be only taken if it is necessary, right? For various reasons. It has its advantages. It also has its disadvantages. Unfortunately, in our case, we had to build a certain amount of infrastructure which was non-software. Like, it was not that we could do a software prototype and launch the business and then go for angel funding or seed funding. We couldn't do that. We had to produce a product that would be accepted by the market, and then that product required raw materials, it required machinery. So we could not start the business without funding. So that was the first step that we had to go through, that we had to convince investors that, okay, this is a business that can scale, it has a big market, and we can do it, right, both of us. So that was around a 6 to 9 month process, and all that while there was no income. So it is tough, at times you feel like giving up and going back to a job. But that is where the conviction of what you are doing comes into picture. And if you are convinced that this is something that you want to do, and you feel that it can become big, then you keep on working at it, and somehow magically one day the funding came and it happened. But you have to be very determined, very strong. Your family has to support you at that time. If you're single, it's much easier because you don't have other people depending on you, and your stress does not get translated to other people. So it's much easier if you're single, and or if you have made money earlier and you're doing something, then it's much easier. But in any other situation, you have to be very, very tough, and you have to keep on trying. And this is not just my story or our story. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs go through that. Elon Musk himself, before he started Tesla, he was almost broke, right, before he got the money. So I think that's, and you hear the story, but experiencing it is a whole different ball game. And all I can say is you have to be, if you are convinced by your idea or conviction to do it, then you should not give up, right, and follow it through the end. Eventually, we got lucky, and two investors believed in us as a team, and they also believed that the market is large enough for it to be a meaningful investment for them. And finally we got funded and we got started. But it is a tough time when between you decide to leave your previous job and then pursue your passion until you get that money, or you are able to do a prototype, to get the initial investment. It is a tough battle, and mental toughness is the thing that I would say. Once we got funded, again the first few months, we had the money, and so things are a little bit easier. But then it's time to deliver, right? So in the life of a startup and an entrepreneur, the challenge never ends, the excitement never ends. Even today, we have the same challenges at a much bigger scale. So the next 6 months after you get money, then you have to basically quickly launch the service, because now you are starting to hire people, start using up that money, and you don't want to use too much of the money before you reach your first milestone, right? In our case, that milestone was to launch that service, start delivering those books, right? So I will not go into specifically our model. There are certain nuances of our own products and businesses. I can go into it if you want to, but I'll touch upon more the generic business things so that there is learning. So we launched our first version of the service, I think 5 or 6 months after we started. So we built the first version of the technology platform. We had the machines, we built the printing workflow, and we produced our first few books. And the first month we got one order, okay, which was okay because we were newbies. The challenge that we faced was, we were both techies. We were not traditionally from the photography industry. And as you know, in India, the photography industry, was more of a traditional industry. There have been families, working on it for 20 years, and the father passes it to the son, and the son to their son, and so on. So we were looked upon as newbies, right? And when we went out to the market and said you have to make the payment upfront, they started laughing, right? So you have to sometimes face very fundamental challenges. But I'll tell you one thing, that if you're not from an industry and you don't carry the baggage of biases and legacy of that industry, you can actually disrupt it, right? I think that's a very important lesson that we learned, because when you don't know what you can't do, you sometimes end up doing it. And we did exactly that. So the first differentiation we made when we started was, which was unheard of in the industry. We went and promised the customers, we didn't have the best product. I mean, it was best in terms of the quality, but I'll give you one example. So the books that were being sold in the market were these 12 by 18-inch wedding books.
Old style volume, albums.
Yeah, big heavy books. And we came out with this A4 thin book, coffee table book, right? And we went to the market and started showing it and saying that, will you buy this? And so many of them laughed, saying that this is not going to work in India. This is too thin.
Yeah.
Right.
On this big, old style volume.
Yeah, it has to be heavy and big. And then we said, okay, what if we are able to deliver this to you in 24 hours? So they said it's impossible. It takes us 1 month to get the book today. How will you deliver it in 24 hours? Right? And the reason why we could do it is because we used the technology platform, the workflows that we built, and we actually started doing that. So then people started thinking, okay, this is something they are delivering actually, right? And then in 3 months we took the feedback, we started building those bigger size books, still lightweight, but bigger size books. So on one hand, the heaviness of the old books was a problem, but the size had to be big because, in India, or I would say globally, the mentality is, okay, if I'm paying money for something, large amount of money, I have to get this big thing. It has to be big. So that was the mentality, and so we had to initially overcome those kind of challenges, very fundamental challenges, right? We used to put our brand on the last page of the book. Again, that was something unheard of, because all these mom and pop shops, they don't have a brand. And the photographers would take the book and nobody would know where that came from. And when we put our brand there, the photographers got so afraid that they will lose their control over the supplier, right?